The stars over the Dominion capital shimmered coldly, a canvas of light stretching across the dark void. From orbit, the city below looked peaceful, but the truth was far from it. Decades of war had left the Dominion of Varel exhausted, and the Terran Alliance was weary of endless conflict. Both sides craved peace, but peace, they knew, required sacrifice. For Princess Solara Varel, heir to the Dominion throne, that sacrifice came in a form she had never expected: marriage. Not just any marriage, a union with a human, a member of the very species her people had fought against for over a decade. Solara had always been proud, strong, and intelligent. She had trained for war as her mother had trained her, mastering psionics, strategy, and combat. Her people were built for dominance, tall with exoskeletal armor over their skin, sharp claws, and a natural command over energy fields that humans could barely comprehend. Humans, by comparison, were small, fragile, and soft, and yet the Council insisted the war could end only if the Terrans saw humanity, the human commander, as their equal. And so Solara's choice was made for her. She was to marry Commander Nathan Hale. Nathan was quiet, even-tempered, and unassuming. He had the lean build of a soldier who had survived countless battles, but he lacked the overwhelming physical presence of the Dominion elite. Some whispered that he was chosen precisely because he seemed harmless. When Solara first laid eyes on him, standing in the grand ceremonial hall, she could not hide her surprise. Nathan's uniform was neat, his posture perfect, but his shoulders were narrow, his hands unarmed, and his expression calm. Almost too calm. He bowed respectfully, and Solara thought she saw a flicker of humor in his eyes. A human with humor in the face of a Dominion princess. What arrogance. The wedding was a spectacle. The hall, carved from crystal and reinforced with steel, gleamed with the light of 1,000 suspended orbs. The virile nobles, adorned in shimmering armor and ceremonial psionic rings, whispered amongst themselves. Many doubted the wisdom of this union. How could a fragile human contribute to the strength of the Dominion? How could he possibly command respect? Solara's mother, Queen Vela, placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. This is not about strength, Solara. It is about peace. Your people need it. The Terrans need it, and you will set the example. Solara inclined her head but said nothing. She had lived her life in service to the throne. She could obey orders. She could marry a human, but her pride flared quietly in her chest. To her people, this union was an embarrassment. To her, it was a burden. Nathan, however, remained composed. As they exchanged vows, he spoke in clear, steady tones. I will serve not just as a symbol, but as a protector. I do not promise to be the strongest, but I promise to fight for peace, for the life we build together, and for the future of both our peoples. Solara blinked. The words were simple, human words, but there was weight behind them, a firmness that carried across the hall. It was the kind of strength that did not come from psionics or exoskeletal muscle, but from resolve. The ceremony concluded, and the guests departed. Solara and Nathan remained in the private chamber of the royal palace. The room was vast, adorned with tapestries depicting the Dominion's victories and overlooking the city through a wall of reinforced crystal. Are you afraid? Nathan asked softly, turning to her. Solara raised an eyebrow. Afraid of what? That my people will despise me? That I am marrying a weakling? Nathan did not flinch. Afraid of failing, he said. Afraid of standing here knowing everyone doubts you won't and knowing you cannot fail because the consequences are too high. That is the only fear that matters. Solara studied him. He was human, fragile in body, yet his words carried a gravity she could not ignore. Perhaps humans were not so simple after all. Days passed and Solara began to see the true difficulty of her new life. The palace, a marvel of architecture and energy manipulation, was a hostile environment for a human. Gravity was slightly higher than Earth's, and the air carried traces of xenon that made humans sluggish at first. Nathan adapted quickly, but even he stumbled at times. The Varel nobles watched him with barely concealed contempt, and Solara often caught their disdainful glances when he moved or spoke. Your husband seems delicate, one noble whispered during a council meeting. Will he even survive the palace trials? Solara's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Nathan had already proven that survival was not about size or strength. It was about adaptability. One evening, as Solara walked through the palace gardens, she saw Nathan sparring. Not with weapons, the humans did not need weapons to demonstrate skill, but with timing, agility, and strategy. His movements were precise, calculated, and deadly in subtle ways. While he lacked claws or psionics, he used his environment, his intelligence, and his instincts to gain the upper hand against virile trainees. Solara felt a flicker of something unexpected: admiration. This human, whom she had dismissed, was more capable than many of her own soldiers. "Why train like this?" she asked, approaching him. Nathan did not look at her immediately. He moved through a sequence of feints and dodges before answering. "Because peace is fragile, and because I cannot rely on anyone else to keep it. If it comes to it, I must be ready, not to win glory, but to survive long enough to protect those I care for." Solara's heart quickened. He spoke of care, of duty, and yet there was no arrogance. The calm determination in his voice made her question everything she thought she knew about humans. The first crisis came sooner than expected. The peace summit with Terran delegates was scheduled to begin in a week, but rogue factions who refused to accept the treaty launched an attack on the orbital defense stations. Alarms blared across the palace. The council panicked. Military units scrambled, and Nathan, without hesitation, took command of the palace defenses. He coordinated the virile security forces with human technology, calculating angles of fire, predicting movements, and anticipating weaknesses. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the chaos transformed into order. The alarm still rang. The enemy was still dangerous, but Nathan's calm, deliberate actions prevented disaster. Solara watched him, stunned. The same man she had thought fragile now commanded respect, not through intimidation but through competence. After the skirmish, she confronted him. You saved hundreds." "How?" Nathan looked at her, eyes steady. "I did what had to be done. Humans survive by thinking, adapting, and refusing to surrender. That is all. You will see, there is more to us than muscle and armor." Solara's thoughts raced. Could it be true? Could this fragile human possess a strength her people had never known? A strength not born of psionics or muscle, but of will, of courage? That night she could not sleep. The stars above the palace shimmered as they always had, but now they seemed different. They seemed to promise something, a challenge, a test, and perhaps even hope. She realized something she had never considered. Marrying Nathan for peace was only the beginning. The true question was whether she could understand the strength hidden within him, a strength that could change everything. The first part of their story was ending, but the real journey had only begun. A fragile human, underestimated by all, had stepped onto Dominion soil, and he carried within him a spark that no alien had ever seen before, a spark that could ignite a new era. Solara gazed at the stars and whispered to herself, almost unconsciously, "What have I brought into my world?" And somewhere deep within, Nathan's quiet determination pulsed like a heartbeat ready to awaken. Life in the Dominion Palace was a world apart from anything Nathan had ever known. The corridors were taller than Earth buildings, lit by glowing energy strips that pulsed softly with life. The walls shimmered, alive with embedded circuits and psychic resonators. Every step he took reminded him of his human limitations. The gravity alone was heavier, every movement slightly exhausting, yet Nathan adapted. Humans were nothing if not resilient. He trained himself to move naturally under the oppressive gravity, breathing slowly, calculating every motion. In private, he would practice for hours, refining techniques he had learned in battle and imagining ways to apply them in this alien environment. Solara observed him from afar, curiosity giving way to something more complex and respect. He did not boast. He did not demand attention. He simply existed, quiet but unyielding, adapting where others struggled. The virile nobles, however, were not impressed. They whispered behind closed doors, eyes flicking toward the human consort as he walked with the princess through the palace halls. "Does he even understand our laws?" one elder scoffed. "I have seen infants with more instinct than that human." Solara clenched her jaw but said nothing. She was learning to guard her emotions, just as Nathan guarded his own. It was during the first official banquet that Nathan truly caught the attention of the court, though not in the way anyone expected. The room was filled with virile aristocrats, Terran diplomats, and dozens of high-ranking officers. A dispute arose over seating arrangements, a seemingly trivial matter, but one that could escalate into offense or insult in Dominion culture. While the nobles argued loudly, Nathan calmly assessed the situation. He quietly moved between the disputing parties, adjusting seating with precise logic and diffusing tension with soft-spoken words. By the time the princess noticed, the argument had ended without a single raised voice. Solara's lips parted in surprise. You resolved that? Nathan gave a small smile. I didn't create the argument. I just removed the reason it needed to continue. The nobles stared in shock. A human had calmed them, and without psionics or force. In that moment, Nathan earned their first tentative respect. Days later, Solara's doubts returned when Nathan attempted his first combat training session with the palace guards. To outsiders, he moved clumsily at first, struggling to keep pace with the taller, stronger Viral. His body seemed inadequate, too fragile to survive even a single sparring session. But Nathan was patient. He studied each opponent, learning their moves, understanding how they reacted under pressure. Slowly, his movements became fluid, calculated, almost impossible to predict. A guard would lunge with a strike meant to disable him instantly, and Nathan would dodge, not with speed alone, but with timing, positioning, and subtle feints. Solara watched, amazed. How are you doing this? He paused, leaning on his knees for a moment, breathing steady. I don't fight like you. I fight like a human. I use what I have, not what I lack. That is always an advantage. The guards, initially smug and dismissive, began to change their tone. They grunted in frustration, realizing that the fragile human had learned their strengths and weaknesses in hours, knowledge they themselves had ignored. Word of Nathan's competence spread quickly. Even the palace staff, who had initially mocked him, started to speak with cautious admiration. The fragile human was becoming a symbol, not of raw power, but of careful intelligence and unbreakable will. Solara, meanwhile, found herself conflicted. She had married Nathan for peace, viewing him as a tool for diplomacy. Yet she could not ignore the growing tension inside her chest. Admiration, curiosity, and even something like affection. He was nothing like she had imagined. The first real test came when a group of border rebels struck the capital during a ceremonial parade. The alarm systems blared, throwing the city into chaos. Vrel generals barked orders, soldiers ran in panic, and the palace guards were overwhelmed. Nathan remained calm. He stepped forward, issuing precise commands that humans and Viral alike could follow. He analyzed the enemy's movement, predicting their strikes, adjusting the palace defense grids, and coordinating with human liaison teams stationed in orbit. Solara followed him, astonished. Where others panicked, Nathan acted. Where others hesitated, he decided. Slowly, the tide of the skirmish turned. When the dust settled, Nathan had saved countless lives, yet his body bore no extraordinary marks. He had not used psionics, nor did he rely on superhuman strength. His victory had been through observation, timing, courage, and planning. Later, Solara confronted him privately. You saved so many. How can a human do this? Nathan met her eyes. Humans survive. That is our nature. We adapt, we learn, and we refuse to give up. Strength is not measured by claws or armor. Strength is measured by will. Solara did not respond immediately. She had been taught that strength was power, dominance, and psychic might. And yet here was a human, fragile, soft, smaller than any Viral, whose will had protected her city, her people, and her life. Days turned into weeks. Nathan's presence became a constant reminder that the Viral way of thinking was not the only way. Solara began to notice the subtle ways he influenced the palace, how he encouraged compromise among stubborn generals, how he guided younger guards to act strategically rather than recklessly, how he learned alien etiquette without losing his humanity. Solara herself started to rely on him. Decisions she would have made impulsively, relying on pride or tradition, she now reconsidered, guided by Nathan's measured logic. Slowly, the princess began to see him as an equal, perhaps more than an equal, but peace remained fragile. Intelligence reports indicated that rebel factions still lurked beyond the capital's orbit, and whispers of assassination attempts circulated. The council remained skeptical of Nathan's human methods. Many still saw him as weak. Then one evening, a new challenge arrived. A small rebel squad infiltrated the palace during the night. bypassing security through hidden vents and psionic cloaking. Alarms triggered and the palace guards rushed blindly, unsure of the intruder's location. Nathan acted immediately. He moved through corridors with a calm certainty, predicting the rebels' path and guiding the guards in silent coordination. When he encountered the intruders, he fought not with brute force but with clever traps, leveraging the palace's architecture to his advantage. Solara followed at a distance, heart pounding. She had never seen such calculated precision. Each move Nathan made seemed impossible. A human navigating alien traps, alien abilities and enemy soldiers at once. By dawn, the intruders were captured, the palace secure, and the council forced to admit Nathan's effectiveness. Even the queen who had watched the events unfold could not hide her astonishment. You have exceeded all expectations, she said quietly to Solara later. Solara shook her head. It is not expectations he exceeded. It is our understanding of strength. Nathan, meanwhile, returned to his quarters exhausted but unbroken. He cleaned his uniform, tended minor injuries, and reviewed every action he had taken. Humans measured success not by recognition, but by preparation, and there were always lessons to learn. That night, Solara observed him from the doorway, marveling at the calm determination in his face. The human she had married for peace was no longer a fragile consort. He was a force of will, a living demonstration of the power she had dismissed so easily. And somewhere deep in the cosmos, the first sparks of a legend were beginning to glow. The fragile husband was proving that humans, underestimated for centuries, carried a strength no alien had yet seen, a strength born not of superiority, but of persistence, courage, and an unyielding heart. Solara whispered into the night, almost to herself, I thought I married a symbol, but I think I married a storm. And Nathan, unaware of her words, quietly prepared for what was coming next. The trials that would test not only his skill, but the very limits of human resilience. The Dominion capital had grown uneasy. Though Nathan had proven himself capable, rumors of discontent among the nobles and the military persisted. Peace was fragile, and the factions that refused to accept the treaty were becoming bolder. Solara could feel the tension every time she walked through the palace corridors. The council chambers buzzed with whispers, debates flaring over strategy, defense, and human reliability. Many generals openly doubted Nathan's abilities, claiming that a single failure would undo everything he had accomplished. Nathan, however, remained calm. He spent hours studying the city's defenses, mapping out potential threats and preparing strategies to counter even the most unexpected attacks. The humans he brought into the capital had become trusted allies, working seamlessly with the Dominion forces. Yet despite these preparations, Nathan knew that intelligence and planning could only go so far, and there were moments when courage and action were all that mattered, and that moment arrived sooner than anyone expected. Rebel fleet appeared near the outer rim of the capital moon. Scouts detected dozens of ships, sleek and deadly, moving with precision. The Dominion generals panicked, arguing over which battalions to deploy. Solara's mind raced. This was the true test of her human husband's strength. Not small intruders or palace skirmishes, but a full-scale attack that could shatter the fragile peace. Nathan stepped into the command room, his presence calm yet commanding. We do not have time to debate. We either act or fail, a general scoffed. And you think humans can stop this? Our fleet is weak in comparison. The Terrans, Nathan interrupted, his voice firm. We are not fighting like your fleet. We will fight smart, fast, and coordinated. Let me lead one battalion. If we fail, I will accept the blame. But if we succeed, we save thousands. The council hesitated. Solara stepped forward. Let him try. He has already proven himself. With a reluctant nod, the generals agreed. Nathan quickly deployed the human battalion, organizing them with precision. Every ship, every fighter moved according to his plan, and slowly the tide of the battle shifted. The rebels were clever, but humans were cleverer. They adapted in real time, predicting the enemy's moves and turning their attacks against them. Solara watched the holographic battle feed from the palace observation deck. Her pulse raced as human ships darted through enemy fire, dodging and striking with a calm she could hardly believe. Each maneuver was calculated, almost artistic, a fragile human guiding machines of war with a grace and courage the Dominion had never seen. Yet the rebels were relentless. They pressed forward, outnumbering the human battalion 5-1. Even Nathan's tactics could not hold them forever. Then he made a decision that stunned everyone. The lead rebel dreadnought, a massive ship bristling with weapons and shielded by psionic barriers, had advanced too far. Nathan activated a specialized exosuit designed for reconnaissance and limited combat. It was experimental, untested in live battle, and meant only for human pilots. He climbed aboard, his face calm as he issued his final instructions to the battalion. "Cover me," he said. "I will draw their attention and neutralize the core." "Follow my orders precisely." Solara froze. The humans hesitated, realizing the danger. The Dominion generals gasped, convinced this act was reckless. Suicidal, even. "Commander, you can't," one general shouted. Nathan's eyes met hers through the crystal panel. "I can, and I will." With that, he launched toward the enemy ship alone, moving with incredible speed for a human under heavy armor. His exosuit absorbed impacts that would have crushed any other pilot, and his mind worked in perfect synchronization with the ship's systems. Every movement was deliberate, every calculation precise. Solara could barely watch. The dreadnought unleashed volleys of energy, psionic blasts that would incapacitate a human in moments, but Nathan dodged and countered. He exploited the ship's weak points, predicted its energy flows, and guided it like a chess piece through the enemy formation. From the observation deck, Solara realized something incredible. Nathan was not merely fighting. He was thinking in ways no alien pilot had ever considered. He used patience, timing, and the enemy's own power against them. Each move was precise, efficient, and deadly. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The rebels' fleet began to falter. Ships that had seemed invincible were being destroyed. But Nathan showed no sign of slowing. Sweat dripped from his brow and the exosuit systems beeped warnings of overload, yet he pressed on. Finally, he reached the core of the lead dreadnought. The ship trembled under his control, threatening to collapse under the strain. The alien psionic fields fought him, trying to expel him from the ship. But Nathan's mind remained steady, refusing to yield. Solara's chest tightened. She had known he was capable, but she had never imagined this. A single human, fragile and underestimated, smaller than anyone else, was about to defeat a dreadnought built for domination. Then, with a roar that echoed across the comm systems, the dreadnought detonated from within. Nathan had used the reactor to collapse the ship into itself, pulling it into the rebel fleet and creating a chain reaction that obliterated dozens of enemy vessels. Silence followed. The observation deck trembled as the last flashes of fire faded into the void. Solara sank into a chair, unable to comprehend what she had witnessed. "Is he alive?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Minutes later, the exosuit transmitted a single message. "Peace. Worth the fight." The Dominion generals were speechless. No human had ever survived such a feat. Many refused to believe it possible. Yet the data confirmed it. Nathan Hale had done the impossible. Solara rushed to the command room, searching for him. When she finally found him, he was exhausted but unharmed, removing his helmet with a calm smile. The exosuit systems were damaged, but Nathan himself was intact. You survived," Solara said, her voice catching. Nathan shrugged. "Humans adapt, we endure. That is all." The council convened immediately. Discussions turned to astonishment, then to reverence. Nathan's actions had not only saved the capital, but had shattered centuries of assumptions about human fragility. The Dominion could no longer dismiss humanity. Yet amidst the triumph, Solara felt something deeper: awe, respect, and an understanding that went beyond strategy or politics. She had married a human for peace, expecting a symbol, a figurehead. Instead, she had married a force of nature. In the following days, the human battalion became the subject of admiration, and Nathan's reputation grew. He moved through the palace with quiet authority, respected not because of his size or psionics, but because of the courage and intelligence he had demonstrated under impossible pressure. Solara walked with him through the palace gardens one evening, stars reflecting in her eyes. "I thought I understood strength," she said softly. Nathan glanced at her, calm as ever. "Strength is not about what you are given. It is about what you do with it." Solara nodded. The lesson was clear. Humans, she realized, had a kind of power the Dominion could not match: ingenuity, endurance, and an unbreakable will. The peace that seemed fragile before now had a new foundation, one built not on treaties alone, but on the courage of a human who refused to fail. And as the stars above shimmered, Solara felt a quiet certainty that Nathan's strength would be tested again, in ways no one could yet imagine. She would witness it, she realized, and the galaxy would never be the same. The fragile husband had become a force no alien had ever seen, and this was only the beginning. The Dominion capital still trembled in the aftermath of the battle, but Nathan's mind was already on the next challenge. The destruction of the rebel fleet had sent a clear message, yet intelligence reports warned of one last remaining dreadnought, a colossal ship, heavily armed, bristling with psionic shields, and piloted by a rebel commander who had survived every previous human and virile attack. The council debated strategy for hours, but no plan seemed sufficient. The generals argued over artillery placements, reinforcements, and fleet formations. Solara watched them, frustration building. They lacked vision. They lacked adaptability. Nathan, quiet as always, stepped forward. "I can neutralize it," he said simply. The council erupted in disbelief. "Do you even understand the scale of this vessel?" "You cannot," Solara interrupted. "Let him try. He has already done what no one thought possible. We follow his plan." Reluctantly, the council agreed. Nathan spent the next hours preparing the exosuit for maximum engagement. Unlike previous suits, this one allowed direct interface with both ship systems and the environment, enhancing human capabilities to levels the virile could not imagine. But the risk was enormous. The human body was not designed to endure prolonged exposure to psionic energy or reactor overloads. Nathan's expression remained calm. "I understand the risks," he said, "but failure is not an option." Solara felt her heart tighten. She had followed him into countless skirmishes before, but this was different. This was no small attack. This was a solo strike against a vessel designed to crush entire fleets. The battle began at dawn. Nathan's exosuit launched from the capital's orbital dock, slipping through the void with precision and purpose. The rebel dreadnought loomed ahead, massive and terrifying, radiating psionic energy that could shatter weaker ships instantly. Nathan assessed its systems in real time. Shields were layered, weapons distributed strategically, and the hull was reinforced with alloys no human engineer had ever encountered. But he did not hesitate. He approached methodically, analyzing weak points, energy flows, and reaction times. The first strike came within moments. Psionic pulses washed over his suit, strong enough to disorient a virile veteran. Nathan staggered, but his mind remained focused. He used every ounce of training, adapting to the alien energy in ways no one had taught him. He moved inside the suit as if it were part of him, every thought connected to its systems, every reflex amplified. Solara monitored from the palace, her psionic link tingling with every movement. She could feel his focus, his determination, and the intensity of his will. She whispered under her breath, "Hold on, Nathan. You can do this." The rebel dreadnought tried to anticipate him, launching energy blasts, deploying psionic traps, and unleashing robotic boarding squads. Nathan countered them all, not with raw strength but with strategy. He anticipated, adapted, and acted with a fluidity the aliens could not match. Hours passed, though time seemed distorted. The battle spread across space, a deadly dance of fire and energy. Nathan's suit strained under the assault, alarms flashing, systems overloading. Yet he did not retreat. He pressed forward, moving closer to the core of the ship. Solara's hands trembled. She had never witnessed such focus. She had heard of humans' courage, but this was beyond imagination. Finally, he reached the core chamber. The heart of the dreadnought pulsed with energy, threatening to overwhelm any intruder. Nathan activated the suit's limiter override, a system designed for emergencies never before used in real combat. Energy surged through the exosuit, amplifying his strength, speed, and psionic resistance beyond normal human limits. Pain seared through his body, every nerve alight, but Nathan's mind remained unbroken. He connected directly with the reactor systems, using his suit to stabilize the energy while simultaneously manipulating it. The ship groaned, its structure straining under the pressure of his control. From the palace, Solara gasped as the dreadnought trembled. The energy output of the ship alone would have destroyed ordinary beings. Yet Nathan remained steady, guiding it like a conductor guiding an orchestra. He repositioned it, directing its destructive power into the surrounding rebel fleet. Explosions erupted in space, massive ships disintegrating in seconds. The rebel dreadnought itself shuddered, threatening to explode. Nathan's suit alarm screamed, warning that the overload could kill him at any moment. Yet he refused to stop. "Peace is worth the fight," he muttered, echoing his earlier words. Every human instinct, every calculation, every ounce of courage converged in this one act. Then, with a final monumental effort, Nathan directed the dreadnought into the heart of the remaining enemy fleet. The resulting chain reaction obliterated dozens of ships instantly. Energy rippled across space like a shockwave, turning the void into a storm of fire and debris. Silence followed. The human battalion and Dominion forces, watching from a distance, could hardly believe what they had witnessed. One human, small, fragile, underestimated, had changed the outcome of the battle completely. Solara felt tears in her eyes. She had married a human for peace, thinking him delicate and inconsequential. Yet here he was, alive, victorious, and more powerful in courage and ingenuity than any Viral or Terran she had ever known. Minutes later, the exosuit transmitted a single message back to the capital. "I did what had to be done." Nathan collapsed, exhausted but alive. The suit's systems were damaged, many irreparable, yet the human himself showed no permanent harm. Dominion healers arrived, astonished at his endurance. You survived this?" Queen Vela whispered. "Impossible." Nathan gave a faint smile. "Nothing is impossible. Humans endure, we adapt. We refuse to give up." The council erupted in murmurs of astonishment and respect. The myths about human weakness had been shattered. Nathan had demonstrated something the Dominion had never witnessed: raw human willpower amplified by ingenuity, strategy, and courage. Solara approached him, awe evident in her expression. I underestimated you," she admitted. "I thought I married a symbol for peace, but you are so much more." Nathan's tired eyes met hers. "I married for peace too. But strength is what we create when we refuse to surrender." In the days that followed, Nathan's actions became legend. The rebels were defeated, peace was secured, and the Dominion could no longer dismiss humanity. Humans were no longer fragile. They were cunning, adaptable, and unbreakable in spirit. Solara walked through the palace gardens one evening, reflecting on everything that had happened. The stars above seemed to shimmer with possibility. She had once viewed Nathan as delicate, a symbol for treaty purposes. Now she understood that his strength came not from size, psionics, or armor, but from a heart that refused to yield. Nathan, quietly repairing his suit, looked up at her. "The battle is over," he said softly. "But peace is only the beginning." Solara nodded. She realized the truth. The galaxy had changed because one human had chosen to rise above every expectation. He had unleashed a strength no alien had ever seen, and in doing so, he had reshaped her understanding of courage, power, and loyalty. From that day forward, humans were no longer underestimated. Nathan Hale had become more than a consort or commander. He had become a legend. And yet somewhere deep in the shadows of space, whispers of new threats began to stir. Solara knew they would come, and Nathan's true test had only just begun. The fragile husband was no longer fragile. He was unstoppable. The Dominion capital had begun to recover. The fires of the recent battles had cooled, and the debris from the rebel fleet drifted in orbit like silent monuments to Nathan Hale's courage. Peace, fragile yet enduring, had been secured not by treaties or politics alone, but by the actions of one human who had proven that willpower and intelligence could surpass even the greatest alien strengths. Solara Vrel walked through the palace gardens, her thoughts heavy with reflection. The stars above shimmered like diamonds scattered across the black void, but her mind was not on their beauty. She thought of Nathan, the human she had married for peace, who had now become a symbol of hope and power across two civilizations. Nathan, quiet as ever, had spent the past days recovering. The exosuit he had used to destroy the rebel dreadnoughts was damaged beyond repair, yet he bore no serious injury. The Dominion healers had been astounded at his resilience. Humans simply were not expected to survive such extremes. Even as he rested, reports kept arriving. Fleets in remote systems were surrendering without resistance. terrified by the tales of the human consort who had single-handedly destroyed the rebel fleet. For the first time, humans were regarded as equals in the Dominion, and for the first time Solara felt something entirely new, pride in her husband that went far beyond gratitude. The council convened in the Grand Chamber, a room of crystal and steel, overlooking the city's radiant skyline. Generals, nobles, and diplomats spoke in hushed tones, finally agreeing on something previously unthinkable. Humanity must be respected. Humans were no longer fragile, no longer underestimated. Their ingenuity, courage, and willpower had been displayed in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. Solara rose to speak. Her voice, firm and resonant, carried through the chamber. For years, humans were thought weak, incapable of true strength. That belief has been shattered. One human, Commander Nathan Hale, has proven that courage, intelligence, and determination are worth more than muscle, psionics, or armor. From this day forward, humans are to be treated as equals, not symbols, not tools, but as partners in the peace of the galaxy. The chamber fell silent, then erupted in approval. For many Viral, it was a shocking reversal of centuries-old beliefs. For Solara, it was a vindication of something she had quietly realized from the start. Strength was not always visible, and it was not always obvious. Nathan entered the chamber, unassuming as ever, and Solara felt her chest tighten. He looked around at the assembly, his calm gaze sweeping across the room. He did not boast. He did not demand recognition. Yet every eye was on him, every mind absorbing the truth of what he had accomplished. A young Viral officer approached him, bowing low. "Commander Hale, your actions have saved our world and changed the way we see humans forever." Nathan's response was quiet but firm. "I did what any human would do. We protect those we care for. That is all." Solara stepped forward, her presence beside him strong and unyielding. "And yet you have done what no one else could. Not because of size, not because of psionics, but because of the courage within you. The galaxy will not forget this." Whispers spread across the chamber. The fragile human, once doubted, once underestimated, had become a living legend. Stories of his bravery would be told in every corner of the Dominion, and the Terran Alliance would carry his reputation across the stars. Even the Queen, Solara's mother, could not hide her astonishment. She approached Nathan, placing a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of respect from the Viral. "You have done the impossible, human. You have brought honor, safety, and understanding where others saw only weakness. We owe you more than words can express." Nathan inclined his head respectfully. "I did not act alone. Peace is a shared responsibility, and the princess, Solara, stood by me when none believed it possible. That gave me the strength to endure." Solara's eyes softened. She had once viewed Nathan as fragile, a figurehead in a marriage for diplomacy. Now she saw him for what he truly was, a man whose courage and ingenuity had changed the course of history. And for the first time she understood the depth of her own feelings for him. Days turned into weeks. The Dominion celebrated the victory and the restoration of peace. Markets reopened, diplomats traveled freely, and messages of congratulations poured in from distant systems. Nathan moved quietly among the people, observing, advising, and teaching them about strategy, coordination, and ingenuity. He shared his experiences with young soldiers, showing them that true strength was not in size or psychic ability, but in determination and creativity. Solara accompanied him often, her presence a symbol of unity. Together they became a living example of the new era, one in which humans and Viral could work side by side, not as master and tool but as equals bound by respect and shared purpose. The people began to speak of Nathan in hushed, reverent tones, not just as a commander, but as a symbol of hope and courage. Parents told their children stories of the human who had saved the galaxy, and young soldiers trained with his lessons in mind. The legend of Nathan Hale grew with each passing day, a testament to the enduring power of human will. Solara often walked with him through the palace gardens at night, the stars reflecting in the water of the fountains. She spoke softly. "You've changed everything, Nathan. Not just the capital, not just the Dominion, but the way we see humans. You've shown us a strength no one ever expected." Nathan smiled faintly, exhaustion shadowing his features. "I only did what I had to. Humans endure. We rise to meet the challenge in front of us. That is all." Solara shook her head, smiling. "No, that is more than enough. That is everything. One evening, Solara received a message from the Terran Alliance. They wished to formally recognize Nathan's actions and offer him a position as a liaison between the human fleets and the Dominion. She read it aloud to him, her voice filled with pride. He looked at her, calm but determined. I accept, not for recognition, but to ensure the peace we fought for endures. This is not about me. It is about what humanity can achieve when we refuse to surrender. The human consort had become a symbol, a living proof that courage, intelligence, and willpower could overcome obstacles thought insurmountable. Solara realized that she had not only married a man for peace, but had also gained a partner whose strength inspired the galaxy. Months passed, and the palace settled into a new routine. Nathan continued to train, advise, and prepare for any threats that might arise, while Solara worked to strengthen political ties and ensure the Dominion honored its promise of equality. Together, they became a force unmatched, a combination of human ingenuity and virile leadership. Stories of Nathan's courage spread far and wide. Poets, historians, and storytellers chronicled his deeds, ensuring that generations to come would understand the magnitude of his achievements. They spoke of the human who had faced impossible odds, who had endured where others would have failed, and who had changed the course of history not with raw power, but with courage and determination. Solara watched him one evening, as he spoke to a group of young soldiers, demonstrating tactical maneuvers with patience and clarity. She felt her heart swell with admiration and love. The man she had married for peace had become so much more than she had imagined. He had become a legend. In the quiet of their chambers, Solara whispered, I thought I married a symbol for diplomacy, but you've shown me what true strength is. Nathan looked at her, tired but smiling. Strength is not given. It is forged, and together we will ensure that it endures. And in that moment, Solara knew it was true. Humanity had proven itself to the galaxy, and Nathan Hale, the fragile human she had once doubted, had become the living embodiment of courage, ingenuity, and the unbreakable human spirit. The galaxy would remember him, not as a weak human, not as a consort, but as a hero whose strength had reshaped the stars. As the twin moons rose over the Dominion capital, casting silver light across the city, Solara and Nathan stood together. Peace had been secured. Humanity had been respected, and the future, once uncertain, now shone bright with possibility. The legend of the human consort had begun, and it would echo through history for generations to come.